The fog rolled in off the Pacific sometime around 9 o'clock in the evening, and by 10:45, it had eaten the highway whole. I know because I'd been watching it come from the window of room 7, the way a man watches something inevitable, not with dread exactly, more with the flat recognition that the decision had already been made for him. The coast road behind me was gone. The coast road ahead of me was gone. There was only the motel and the yellow sign out front that said vacancy in a color that had once been red, and the sound of the ocean somewhere in the white, nothing beyond the parking lot. Then her car pulled in. She drove slowly, too slowly for someone who'd simply gotten lost. She was checking exits. Dangerous secrets, slow-burning tension, and two people who should know better, told in the voice of a man who never looks away. If you love this kind of stories, hit that subscribe button and tell me where you're watching from, because the next part might make you feel the thrill of being in love again, or maybe fill that brokenness you've been carrying. Either way, stay tuned. It was 11 o'clock at night when she knocked, and I was still dressed, which told you something about the kind of sleep I'd been having for the last 4 months. I opened the door, without asking who it was. Another thing that told you something. She was in her late 30s, maybe, though the way she held herself made the number irrelevant. Dark hair pulled back, jacket that had dried recently. She'd been wet before this, somewhere else, and had the good sense not to arrive still soaked. Her eyes did what eyes do when they belong to someone trained to survive small spaces. They moved, corners, shadows, the gap between my arm and the door frame. Then they settled on my face with a steadiness that was not calm. It was the opposite of calm. It was control. "I need a room," she said. "Office is 2 doors down. The office is dark. A beat. You're not." I looked at her for a moment. The fog pressed in behind her like a second presence. There was nothing on the highway. There hadn't been for 2 hours. "Who sent you here?" I asked. She didn't flinch. That was the tell. A civilian flinches at a question like that. She just tilted her head a 1/4 inch and said, "No one sends anyone, anywhere, anymore." I drove until the road ended. I stepped back. She came in. The room was small. The way all rooms are small when something large has just entered them. Not square footage, but atmosphere. She stood in the center of it, and did one slow revolution, clocking every surface. The window, the back wall, the bathroom door left half open. She did not look at the bed. Neither did I, but I noticed that I didn't. "There's a machine down the hall," I said. "Coffee. It's terrible." "I know," she said. And then, so quietly it might have been meant for herself, "I stayed here once before. I let that sit between us." Outside, the fog swallowed a car horn in the distance, and then there was nothing again. Just the ocean, invisible and enormous, doing what oceans do when no one's watching. She hadn't told me her name. I hadn't asked. We were both being very careful about that. She took the chair by the window, not the one closest to the door. That one she left for me, and I noticed she'd calculated that, giving me the exit and keeping the wall at her back. Two people who understood rooms would always end up arranging themselves like this, like chess pieces that had been through the same game before. I poured 2 cups from the flask on the nightstand. She accepted hers without comment. "The road north," she said. "When does it clear? Depends on the fog. Could be 5 in the morning. Could be noon." She absorbed this, the way people absorb information they already suspected. No reaction. Just a small internal recalibration she almost managed to hide. "You're not a tourist," I said. "Neither are you." The flask went back on the nightstand. The radiator knocked once, twice, then settled into its low mechanical hum. I had been in this room for 11 days. I knew every sound it made by hour. This, 2 people not saying the real things, was a new sound entirely. "I'm going to sleep in the chair," she said. "You don't need to. Take the bed." She looked at me then, not with suspicion, with something more complicated than suspicion. Like she was deciding whether the offer was kindness or strategy and couldn't determine which made it more dangerous. "I don't sleep," she said. Neither do I. I moved to the chair by the door, pulled it to face the window at an angle. Then we'll both not sleep somewhere comfortable. Something moved across her face. Not a smile. The ghost of one, maybe. The memory of knowing how, by 2 a.m, the fog had thickened until the parking lot light was just a smear of amber. And she had told me 3 true things and 6 false ones, and I had kept careful track of all of them. Her name was Elena. I was 70% certain that was accurate. She was traveling alone. True, her car held 1 coffee cup, driver's side, and the passenger seat had that particular emptiness of a space never used for company. She was a nurse between positions. False. Her hands were too still. Medical professionals develop a subtle, constant motion. Checking, adjusting, reaching. Her hands rested like weapons set down. Present. Waiting. Around 2:15 in the morning, she asked me what I did. Consulting, I said. She didn't smile. What kind? Risk assessment. Every word of that was accurate. Every word of it said nothing. And you assess risk by staying in a November motel on a closed highway. I assess risk by staying somewhere no one expects me to be. The radiator knocked. She looked at the amber smear of parking lot through the window, and for a moment her control slipped. Not much, barely enough to register. And I saw something underneath it that I recognized because I had looked at it in mirrors. Exhaustion, so deep it had stopped feeling like tiredness and started feeling like weather, and like a permanent climate you simply inhabited. How long have you been running? I asked. She turned back to me. The control was back, seamless, like a door that had never opened. What makes you think I'm running? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. After a long moment, she said, 14 months. I said nothing. That was a specific number. Specific numbers were always the truest things people said. At 3:40 in the morning, she finally slept. Not in the bed. She'd refused again, and I had stopped offering. She was in the corner of the bed frame, back against the wall, knees drawn up slightly, jacket still on. The way soldiers sleep. The way people sleep who have learned that being found horizontal is a liability. I sat by the door and watched the fog and did not watch her. 14 months. I had been running for 4. The arithmetic of that was a sentence I did not finish. Her breathing had changed. Slower, the deliberate surrender of someone who has held off sleep long enough that the body simply wins. I got up quietly, moved to the window. The highway was still gone. The ocean was still out there in the darkness. Patient as a creditor. On the nightstand her phone sat face down. I had not touched it. I was noting that I had not touched it. The way you note the things you're choosing not to do when you're not entirely sure why you're choosing them. Her jacket pocket had a shape in it. Angular. Not a phone. The phone was on the table. I had been, not, thinking about that shape since she sat down. 4 months ago I had trusted someone I should not have trusted, and 3 people were dead, and I was here, in a fog-blind motel on a coast road that led nowhere, and I had learned to notice shapes in jacket pockets. She made a sound in her sleep. Small, not distress, something smaller than that, like a word she'd started and thought better of. I turned back to the window. The fog had, almost imperceptibly, begun to thin. She was awake when I turned back around. She had not moved, but her eyes were open, and they were watching me with the complete alertness of someone who does not transition through groggy. How long was I out? She said. 40 minutes. She processed this. You watched the door. I watched the fog. A silence that was not empty. Same thing, here. She sat forward, rolled her neck once, each side. Then she looked at me with the particular focus of someone who has decided something while sleeping. I had the distinct impression the decision was about me. I know who you are, she said. The radiator went quiet. Even the ocean seemed to pause, and I kept my face neutral. Not because I'm particularly gifted at neutrality, but because over 4 months it had become the only expression I fully owned. You were on the news in August, she said. Different name, same face. The story was, they said you'd gone into the program. I didn't believe it. Why not? Because the program doesn't hide people in places this obvious. This is a man hiding himself. She held my gaze. Or a man waiting to be found by the right person. The fog outside shifted. A truck moved through it somewhere on the highway, invisible. Just engine noise swelling and fading like a thought. You said you stayed here before, I said. When? She looked at her hands for a moment. March. I was being moved. The handler stopped here for fuel, and I sat in this parking lot for 20 minutes. And I thought, if I'm ever on my own, this is a place the road forgets. The road forgets, I repeated. I needed somewhere the road forgets. So had I. That was the thing I was not saying. And she was not saying. And the room was full of, by 4:30 in the morning, she had told me the real shape of her 14 months. And I had told her 6 weeks of my 4. And we had both said enough that neither of us could leave now, without the other knowing it. Her name was not Elena. She offered the real one at 4:47 in the morning, quietly, across 2 feet of November air, and I received it the way you receive something irreplaceable, carefully, without moving, as if stillness could protect it. Marcus, I said, my real one. She repeated it once, to herself, like testing weight. She had been a federal prosecutor, organized crime, mid-level at first, then larger than mid-level, and then she had found a piece of information that was not organized crime at all, but something closer to the architecture beneath it, names that appeared in courtrooms and in government offices alike. And that piece of information had made her a liability in 2 directions at once. The handler, I said, in March, gone, flat, final, by April. I looked at the shape in her jacket pocket. Is that for them or for me? She looked down at it, then back up. I didn't know which you were yet. And now, she didn't answer immediately. The fog outside had thinned enough that I could see the first ghost of the highway, just the white line, barely, like a rumor of road. Now I think, she said slowly, that you're someone who kept the lights off in his room for 11 nights and left them on the 12th. I hadn't consciously decided to. I had just been tired of the dark. I saw it from the highway, she said. One lit window that sat between us for a long time, neither of us touching it. It was the name that detonated everything. Not hers, not mine. Came out by accident, the way the true things always do, not through confession, but through the small unguarded moment. A name dropped in the course of explaining something else, and I heard it and went absolutely still, and she saw me go still, and the room changed temperature. Raise. She had said the name of the man I had testified against, the man who had 3 people killed to prevent that testimony. The man who, according to the last communication I'd received before going dark, was looking for me through intermediaries, carefully, patiently, the way a man looks for something when he is confident he will find it. She had said his name in the past tense, familiarly, not as a monster, as a case. How do you know that name? I said. She heard the shift in my voice. She went still too. He's connected to what I found. He's a node in it, not the center, but a node. He killed my partner. Silence. He killed my partner, I said again, not louder, but with a weight that the first time had been missing. Her name was Carol. She had 2 kids. He killed her because she drove me to the courthouse. Elena. Her real name. I still could not make myself use it, looked at me with something that I could not categorize. Not guilt. Not pity. Something that recognized pain without flinching from it, which is rarer and harder than either. I know, she said. I know about Carol. She's in the files. I stood up, walked to the window. The highway was visible now in the pre-dawn gray. Both directions. Empty, finally clear. The road had come back, and I was not sure I wanted it to. She came to stand beside me, not close, 2 feet, maybe 3, but beside me, facing the window, so that we were both looking at the same empty road. The files I found, she said, they go up further than Reyes. He's a tool. What I have, what I was moved to protect, is what's above him, the names above him. And if those names are exposed, he has no more cover. He has no more anything. She paused. Which means whoever holds those files holds the thing that ends this, for both of us. I looked at the highway. A single pair of headlights appeared in the distance. North, moving south, unhurried. I watched them come and pass and disappear. "Where are the files?" I said. She was quiet long enough that I turned to look at her. She was watching the taillights fade into the remaining fog. In the gray pre-dawn light, she looked like someone who had been carrying something very heavy for a very long time, and had not yet decided whether setting it down would be relief or surrender. "I'm the files," she said. 14 months of memorization, nothing written, nothing stored, everything in here. She touched 2 fingers to her temple, not dramatically, but the way you indicate a place on a map. I understood then the full shape of what she was, not a woman with a document, a woman who had made herself into the document, so that she could not be taken from herself. I understood why they had been hunting her for 14 months. I understood why she'd come through a fog-blind highway and knocked on the only lit window, and I understood, with a clarity that felt like something tearing cleanly, that I was not going to let her leave this room alone. We left at 6:20 in the morning, when the light was still the color of an unfinished sentence. I took my car. She left hers. Plates were burned, she said, had been since September. She got in the passenger seat and set her hands flat on her knees and looked straight ahead at the coast road with the expression of someone who had gotten used to not looking at the things that frightened them. I drove north. She watched the road. Somewhere around the 40-minute mark, when the fog had fully lifted and the Pacific appeared on our left like an accusation, she said, "You don't have to do this. I know. I mean it. This is my situation, my wait." With a came through fog on a closed highway to a motel you remembered from one stop in March, I said. "You chose that room because the road forgets it. You sat in my room for 7 hours and memorized my patterns before you told me your name, and I kept my eyes on the road. You're not someone who does anything without calculating the odds, so I'd like to know what odds you calculated that brought you to my door." A long silence. The ocean flashed. 63%, she said, "that you were what I thought you were, and the other 37. I had the jacket." There was no smile in that, but there was something, a dryness, a recognition between 2 people who lived in the same dangerous grammar. I felt it, and did not name it, and kept driving. The thing between us had no name yet. That was either its fragility or its protection. I had not decided which. Carl had known, in the last months, that something was coming. She had not said so, but she had started looking at me differently, the way people look at something they're afraid of losing. I had not understood it then. I was beginning to understand things lately, too late. I drove. She kept her hands flat on her knees. The road unreeled in front of us, clear and cold and entirely without guarantees. We reached the safe house at 8:50 in the morning, in a city I won't name. On a street the road also forgets. I unlocked the door. She stepped inside and did her survey, corners, shadows, exits, and then stood in the center of the room and stopped moving entirely, not with relief, with something more complicated, the particular stillness of someone who has arrived somewhere and does not yet know if arriving is safe. I put the keys on the counter. "There's food," I said, "if you want to sleep." In a while, she turned, looked at me directly in the way she had been carefully not doing for most of 8 hours. "What happens now? Now we figure out who above Reyes is reachable, who can be pressured, who can be used. And if none of them can, then we find another way." She held my gaze. Behind her, through the window, an ordinary city moved through its ordinary Tuesday morning, entirely unaware of what stood in this room. Everything she carried, everything I owed, the weight of Carol's name, and the weight of 14 months, and the 47 months in a fog-blind motel when neither of us had known whether to trust the other, and had moved, without deciding to, toward trust anyway. "You said you don't sleep," she said. "Not much. I'll take the chair, take the bed." She almost smiled. The real one this time. I could see it. The full shape of it arriving and then rerouting, the practiced restraint of someone not yet certain that softness is safe. It didn't matter. I had seen it coming. I knew what it looked like now. "Marcus," she said. My name in her mouth was still new, still something I was learning the weight of. "I know," I said, and I did. Not all of it, not yet. But the road ahead was clear, which was more than either of us had had in a long time. And sometimes that is exactly enough to begin with. The door was locked. The city moved outside, somewhere. Men with our names on lists were already revising their plans. That was tomorrow. That was the next road. This, the quiet, the locked door, the uncertain possible thing neither of us had yet named, was now, and for the first time in 4 months, now was enough. That's where we leave them. A locked door. A city that doesn't know their names, and something neither of them has found the word for yet. If this story kept you in the fog with them, hit that like button. It tells the algorithm that quiet things still matter. And if you're new here, this channel is one story at a time. No summaries, no shortcuts, just the kind of dark that makes you want to stay in it. Subscribe and turn the bell on so the next one finds you the way this one did. At the right moment, out of nowhere, like a lit window on a road you thought was closed. Drop a comment below. Did you trust her from the first knock, or did it take longer? I read everyone. I'll see you in the next story.